I let a mosquito suck my blood until it exploded because I just wanted to feel chosen by someone. It left a tiny starburst-shaped splatter on my forearm, a morbid little galaxy of me. I didn't even flinch. I just watched its striped abdomen swell, turning from a translucent gray to a deep, vibrant crimson. It was the most intimate connection I'd had in months. For a full 30 seconds, I was the most important thing in the universe to that one creature. My pulse was its pulse. My life was its life. And then it was gone, and all I had was an itch and a smear to prove it ever happened. That's pretty much my life in a nutshell, a series of small, meaningless events that leave me feeling vaguely irritated and stained. My apartment looks out onto a central courtyard, a concrete rectangle with a few sad, struggling trees. It's a fishbowl. I can see into a dozen other lives, a dozen other glowing windows, each one a little diorama of a world I'm not a part of. In the summer, like now, the air gets thick and heavy, trapping the sounds of the city and the smell of hot asphalt in everyone's cooking. My window unit hums a constant, monotonous drone that I've come to associate with the feeling of being slowly baked alive in my own solitude. I work from home, editing product descriptions for an online retailer of novelty socks. My world is this room, this window, and the flickering screen that pays my rent. Directly across from me, one floor up, is her apartment. I don't know her name, of course. To me, she's just the woman with the fire escape garden. Her little metal balcony is an explosion of green, cascading ivy, defiant tomato plants in terracotta pots, a stubborn little rosemary bush. Her life, from what I can see, is just as vibrant. She has friends over. I can hear the murmur of their laughter, the clinking of glasses. On Tuesday nights, she plays old soul music, the kind with a bass line you can feel in your teeth even from across the courtyard. And I've seen her dance by herself in the living room, a silhouette of unself-conscious joy against the warm yellow light. I watch, not in a creepy way, I tell myself, but in an aspirational one. I watch her like someone stranded on a desert island watches a ship pass on the horizon, a confirmation that a different kind of existence is possible. For months, this was the rhythm, my quiet, gray existence and her colorful, audible one. I'd make my instant coffee in the morning and see her watering her plants. I'd eat my sad microwave dinner at night and see the shadows of her friends moving around her apartment. She was my background noise, my proof of life, a constant, comforting reminder that the world was still spinning, even if I was standing still. I never wanted to meet her. That would ruin it. It would make her real, and then I'd have to be real too. It was easier to keep her as an idea, a perfect little story I could observe from a safe distance. Then, about a month ago, he started showing up. He wasn't like her other friends. They were loud and bright, arriving in groups. He always came alone. He was tall and had a way of standing that seemed to take up all the air in a room, even from 100 feet away. He never smiled. The first time I saw him, he was standing behind her when she was at her kitchen counter, and he put his hands on her shoulders. It didn't look like a gentle gesture. It looked like an anchor, like he was holding her in place. After he started coming around, the music on Tuesday nights stopped. The friends came less and less, until they didn't come at all. The fire escape garden began to suffer. The tomato plants yellowed and drooped, their unpicked fruit shriveling on the vine. A fine layer of city grime coated the ivy. She wasn't out there in the mornings. Sometimes I'd see them through the window, just sitting in silence. Her on the couch, staring at nothing. Him in a chair opposite her, just watching her. The quality of the light in her apartment seemed to change, too.
It looked dimmer somehow, thinner. The warm yellow glow was replaced by the cold, blue-white flicker of a television screen that was always on. The story was changing, and I couldn't look away. My little ship on the horizon was veering off course, heading straight into a storm, and I was still stuck on my island, just watching. One night, the sound of a glass breaking shattered the usual hum of the courtyard. It wasn't the festive clink I used to hear. It was a sharp, violent sound, followed by a silence so absolute it felt louder than the crash itself. I was at my desk, trying to write a witty one-liner about a pair of socks with tacos on them, and my hands froze over the keyboard. I looked across to her window. The lights were on, but I couldn't see them. The silence stretched on for a minute, then two. I held my breath, straining my ears for a shout, a sob, anything. Nothing. Just the drone of my air conditioner and the distant wail of a siren that had nothing to do with us. I told myself it was nothing. People drop things, couples fight, it's normal. But my stomach felt like it was full of cold, heavy stones. The taco socks suddenly seemed like the most pointless things in the entire world. A few days later, I saw her on the fire escape. It was the first time in weeks. She wasn't watering the plants. She was just standing there, smoking a cigarette, even though I'd never seen her smoke before. It was a sweltering afternoon, the kind where the air feels like wet wool, but she was wearing a long-sleeved gray sweatshirt. She kept her back to the courtyard, facing the brick wall of her own building, as if she couldn't bear to look out, as if she knew someone might be watching. Me. He came up behind her and put a hand on the back of her neck. From this distance, I couldn't see his expression, but I saw the way her whole body went rigid, a statue in a sweatshirt. He said something, his head bent close to her ear. She just nodded, a tiny, jerky movement, and then she flicked the cigarette over the railing. It fell, a tiny orange ember tracing an arc through the dusk before vanishing. He guided her back inside, his hand never leaving her neck. My voyeurism had curdled. It was no longer aspirational. It was sickening. It felt like a responsibility I had never asked for. My quiet little apartment, my sanctuary of solitude, now felt like a guard tower where I was the only guard, and I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I stopped being able to focus on my work. My screen would be filled with images of socks patterned with corgis and avocados, but my eyes would be glued to her window, scanning for movement, for a sign. I was cataloging details like a detective. The curtains, which used to be open all the time, were now usually drawn. The times he arrived and the times he left. The way the light in her living room would stay off for hours after he was gone, as if she was just sitting in the dark. The story was no longer something I was observing. It was something that was happening to me, a slow-motion horror film playing out on a screen I couldn't turn off. The breaking point came on a Thursday. It was late, almost midnight. He left, slamming the building's main door so hard I felt the vibration through my floor. I watched his figure cross the courtyard and disappear down the street. Her apartment remained dark. For an hour I sat at my own window, a sentry in the dark, just watching her blacked-out window pane. I was about to give up, to tell myself I was crazy, that I was projecting my own loneliness into some melodrama that didn't exist. Then a single light switched on. It was her bathroom light, the small frosted window next to her main one. I could see her silhouette, a soft, indistinct shape against the glow. She was just standing there, perfectly still. She wasn't showering. She wasn't brushing her teeth. She was just standing. Minutes turned to 10, then 20. My heart hammered against my ribs.
The stillness was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. It was the shape of absolute despair. And I realized the story wasn't about her anymore. It was about me and what I was going to do now that I couldn't pretend I didn't see. The glass of my window felt less like a barrier and more like the surface of a deep, cold water I was about to fall into. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, the window pane fogging with my breath. The silhouette in the bathroom stayed perfectly still, a cutout against the frosted light. And in that moment, the entire architecture of my life, this carefully constructed fortress of solitude, felt like it was made of paper. My isolation wasn't a sanctuary. It was a prison of my own making, and the warden was my own fear. The story wasn't mine to just watch anymore. Watching had become a form of participation, a silent endorsement of the silence. To do nothing now would be a choice, an active, conscious decision to let the storm swallow the ship while I stood on my island, dry and safe, and utterly, completely alone. I couldn't do it. I finally understood that my loneliness wasn't going to be solved by watching someone else live. It could only be solved by living, by taking one terrifying step out of the frame. My hands were shaking as I pulled a piece of paper from my printer tray. It felt impossibly loud in the quiet of my apartment. What do you even write on a note like that? "I've been watching you and I think you're in trouble"? That sounded like a threat. "Are you okay?" Too direct, too invasive. It could make things worse. My mind raced, stumbling over words. I thought about her plants, the dead and withered tomato vines. That was it. That was the way in. It was the shared language of the courtyard. I found a pen and wrote, my handwriting a jagged mess. "Hi," it started. "I live in 4B, across the way. I couldn't help but notice your garden. I'm not much of a green thumb myself, but I have some fertilizer that brought my sad-looking fern back to life. It's yours if you want it." It was clumsy. It was transparent, but underneath the flimsy pretext, the real message was there. "I see you. I'm here." I finished it with my name and apartment number, then folded the paper 3 times, my heart beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Leaving my apartment was like breaking the surface of the water. The air in the hallway was thick and stagnant. I crept down the stairs, each step a potential betrayal, convinced I'd run into him coming back for something he forgot. The courtyard was bathed in the eerie orange glow of the city night. It looked completely different from down here. Not a stage to be viewed from above, but a real place. The concrete was cracked. A stray cat darted into the shadows. Her building's entrance loomed, and I slipped inside the unlocked door, my breath held tight in my chest. Her apartment was 3B. I could hear the faint, tinny sound of the television from behind the door. I knelt, my knees protesting on the linoleum, and pushed the small folded piece of paper into the gap. It disappeared into the darkness on the other side. For a second, I just stayed there, crouched in the dim hallway, my ear near the door, listening to the canned laughter of a sitcom. Then I scrambled back to my feet and ran, not stopping until my own door was locked securely behind me. I didn't sleep. I sat in my desk chair in the dark, and I watched her door from my window. I watched until the sun started to bleed over the horizon, turning the gray sky to a bruised purple, then a soft pink. Nothing happened. The TV sound had eventually stopped hours ago. The light in the bathroom had eventually gone out. I felt a new kind of despair setting in, the despair of having acted and failed. Maybe he found the note. Maybe she threw it away. Maybe I had just made everything 1,000 times worse. I finally passed out in my chair for an hour or two, and when I woke up, the morning was in full swing. My neck ached. I dragged myself to the window, expecting the same static scene, the drawn curtains, the dead plants. But something was different. The curtain on her main window was pulled back a few inches. And then I saw her. She was on the fire escape. She was holding a small watering can, tipping it over the pot with the shriveled tomato vines. The water darkened the dry soil, a futile, hopeful gesture. She wasn't wearing the gray sweatshirt. She was in a t-shirt, and in the bright morning light, I could see the faint, yellowing shadow of a bruise on her upper arm. She finished with the plant, then she stood up straight, and she did something that made all the air leave my lungs. She turned her head, ever so slightly, and looked directly at my window. We were 100 feet apart, separated by a courtyard and 2 panes of glass. But in that moment, I had never felt so close to another human being in my entire life. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just looked, acknowledged. Then she turned and went back inside, pulling the door to the fire escape shut behind her. What's the difference between minding your own business and neglecting your own humanity? Let us know in the comments.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. I post new stories every day.